Hello, everybody. It is Lloyd Malik here at Ask Lloyd. Here is another edition. And today, the topic is going to be transitions surrounding divorce. Of course, that's a big transitional time in all of our lives. So I'm so happy to have my very good friend, Nahid here. Nahid Oberfeld is a mindset coach. She's been helping me out, not necessarily as a client per se, but as a friend. We've had some good discussions about this in the past. And that's why I figured she'd be a great guest for this Ask Lloyd on transitions. But Nahid, before we get started, could you just tell my, I guess whoever's watching us, our people, a little bit about yourself, about your background?
Yes, absolutely. So I have kind of a crab-like background, if you will. What I mean by that is I started off as an undergrad psychology major, a biopsychology major, and I really worked on what's going on in our brains, which then from there, I did my MBA. I worked in finance for many years, recognizing that my own mindset needed a little bit of fine tuning, which brought me back to coaching. And this is why I love it so much, because your mindset, it impacts you physically and emotionally. You can feel it when you're stuck physically as well.
So I was wondering if there was anything that you had been thinking about, in preparation for this that you want to talk about.
So first and foremost, I just want to start off by saying transitions, regardless of what they are, can bring about a whole lot of emotion, right? It could be even something like having a baby that you may be excited about, but there's still all this fear, this doubt. And at the very core, what transitions lead to is uncertainty for the future. And on the one hand, that's great because it means that you're starting a new chapter. It means that you get to do something. You almost have a do-over, right? I mean, that's the good thing about life. You do get the do-over. You do get to have an opportunity to leave something that you didn't find necessarily to be the best thing for you. Maybe it worked at some point, but doesn't work anymore. So step one is just to recognize that all kinds of transitions bring out any emotion within us. And then there's a whole range of emotions because part of it could be that, yes, I'm moving forward, I'm excited. And then there are others that might be feeling really nervous, really anxious, really apprehensive. And the first thing that I tell people, so as you mentioned, I'm a mindset coach. And the first thing I tell people is that whatever emotions you're feeling is right and appropriate for you. Stop battling yourself and making yourself wrong. Oh, I should be feeling this because the media tells me this versus the other thing. And I'm a mindset coach. And yes, I would love everybody to feel perfectly good all the time, but acknowledge whatever emotions are coming up first, because I can promise you, as soon as you acknowledge them, then you can get over them. We've all heard the saying, what you resist persists.
Hmm.
So the more you hold on to something, the more you battle something, the longer it takes for you to actually start that healing process, if that's the next step in your journey.
So it sounds like a little bit of mindfulness because now you're sitting back a little bit and being aware of your own emotional thoughts. So you're kind of separating it and being able to do that. That's kind of hard to do for some people. Is there any way to get yourself trained or in the mode of checking yourself like that?
Yeah, so first thing I'll tell you, when I work with somebody, very first thing I do as part of my consultation is I put them through this exercise. I ask them to close their eyes. I ask them to imagine they're sitting in a movie theater. It's a completely empty movie theater, and they're seeing themselves on the screen. So it's that little bit of objectivity, one step further. So it's not them that they're seeing, it's their life that they're seeing on the screen. And they're sitting back and kind of observing it. And in that process, they're feeling the emotions because we're taught to stuff our emotions. And I don't feel like that's the right way to move forward. So it's about feeling the emotions, acknowledging the emotions, recognizing it's there. Then you can take a step and move forward. And that is hard for us to do on our own. So another really good way of doing it is journaling. Just start writing. Don't worry about right or wrong. Just put out what's on your mind and put it on paper. Because sometimes when you go back and you look at it, you're like, well, you know what? I don't know that I feel that way anymore. You've actually just released it. You acknowledged it.
Well, one of the things that I like to do, and I have, advised clients before, is if you are going to be journaling and the issues are surrounding your divorce, you don't necessarily want the other side to see it. There are some things that you can do. And I had told my clients, I said, listen, you can't really, you could journal, but you got to turn it over. But if you write a letter to me, it'd be privileged. So I've had people do that if they feel uncomfortable knowing that there might be,
Right.
they don't, I mean, again, if this is just really, protected communications,
Absolutely.
but that's one thing that people could do. But it is, it's definitely very helpful. I mean, I've heard people who have been very successful in journaling. And one of the things also, as far as journaling, not necessarily just for the positive mindset, but just if there are things that are adversely affecting you, the client, um, and you think you're going crazy, or you just can't believe some of the stuff that's going on, you don't feel like it's really real, and quite frankly, you might forget it. That might just be another reason that you would want to continue to journal. Not only the feelings, but if there are incidences that have some significance in with respect to why you're feeling this way. Again, when it's related to the divorce. I mean, we could talk about, keep it in this context or just in
Right.
general, sure. But I definitely see specific uses or ways that you can use that, and that's great advice. What about people who feel grateful, gratitude? Is there something that you can do with grateful gratitude?
Yeah, so let's always start. Step one is always acknowledging where you feel. And I think what you've said, writing you a letter is actually a great thing for you to just a data dump. Take it out of here and put it on here. For those of you who've watched, Harry Potter and that Dumbledore thing that he would like get that stuff out of his head, right? Get it out of your head and put it in a place where you can then observe it more objectively. That's step one. So when you've done that, that has to be the first step. When you've done that, now you can move forward and actually start looking at your life with a different lens. You perhaps might not be holding on to as much if there's anger or resentment. If that's there, it might lessen a bit. Now you can start looking at, okay, what's going right in my world? That is critical. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because especially when we're not happy with a particular situation, we focus, we obsess, right? Like I said, what you resist persists, and we keep focusing on that one piece of thing.
Like that's like ruminating, right? It just keeps going
Yeah,
over and
nonstop, that
over.
monkey mind, exactly.
Yeah, I see a lot of people who I deal with on a regular basis who are there, and a lot of people get over it, but some people are really, really stuck. And I know that
Yeah,
that's not my place, but I want to be able to help them. Referring them out to somebody who is really in the position to work with them, because it's hard to really do anything when you're so
right.
caught up in your whatever it is, your fear, your resentment, it's either usually one of those two, but ultimately, but
Ultimately, it all comes down to fear. I mean, there are all those other anger, resentment, and everything else that's in there, but it ultimately all comes down to fear. So you're absolutely right. If you are so stuck in something, then you're right. You're not even bringing any ability for solutions. That's the key. Like you are here, they come to you for solutions. But if they're so stuck in their thinking, it's even hard for you to present them with solutions because they're not willing to move forward for one reason or the other. And so it comes back to, okay, let's roll the tape all the way back. Maybe there's nothing about this person that you're divorcing that you could find any gratitude about, but is there something about a life that you experienced, for example, that you may not have done X, Y, or Z, children that you may have because of this marriage
right.
together,
That
life
story,
together.
sure. That is one of those things that you could, no matter how much a client may regret ever being with that person, as they're going through it, it's a very, very difficult time. Never once did anyone regret the children they had together. So that certainly is a great place to focus on gratitude.
And the other thing, and it won't be apparent today,
Mhm.
but something that your clients will start noticing as they move forward with their own healing process, that they as a person have grown for the better for themselves. And what I mean by that is typically what happens, I shouldn't say typically, but there are situations where one person feels like they're always been the caregiver, right? You talk about the flower and the gardener. Sometimes there's only one person who's the gardener. And now begins their journey to actually start becoming the flower as well, right? It becomes about them as well. And so whatever experience we have, divorce maybe being an exaggerated one, it's bringing us back to what's out of alignment or what's not in balance within my life that I have control over. It's always back to what do I have control over? And when you start looking at it that way, it doesn't seem quite such a big external thing that maybe or may not have been thrust on you. Maybe you even wanted it, but it still feels uncomfortable. But as soon as you go back to these are the things I have in my control, it starts feeling a lot more doable.
So it's been great so far, but because of the way the podcast works, we're going to take a break now. We're going to come back and do a part two. And in part two, what I'd like to discuss is a little bit more about techniques that we use, that we can use, that you would recommend when people want to go through these transitions and want to do something to help change their mindset to a better one.